It's nice to see you. I saw you briefly a couple years ago at the CCMAs in Hamilton.
Yeah, I totally remember meeting you. Totally.
I know you recently had a birthday. Happy birthday, belated.
Thank you. July 1st.
July 1st.
I was actually heading to do the Dauphin Country Fest for the 3rd. So on July 1st, I was actually getting everything ready and to head out the door. My husband wanted to do something on July 1st. And I was like, honey, I've got so much to do. I packed suitcases on my birthday, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Fun. All right. Well, your current single, Small Town, is what we're here to talk about today. It's been a while since you had something come out, and now is a great time to do it. You co-wrote the Small Town with Rick Farrell and Danielle Bajard. And I read at first here that you weren't all that excited over the idea behind this song. Can you tell us about that and why you changed your mind?
Well, I had gotten together with Danielle and Rick Farrell, and it was our first time writing together. And Danielle's a young up and coming artist, and she was asking me questions about my career, and which was fun. You know, she's like, tell me a little bit, because I'm wanting to get going here, and tell me what it's been like for you. And I just said, oh gosh, you know, it's been wonderful. I've traveled around the world, and did the Jay Leno show and sang at the World Series. And I was just sort of saying things like that. And she said, that's what we're going to write about. And I said, oh, no, I'm not going to write a song about me. She said, oh yeah, that's what we need to write about. And I was like, no, we're not going to write a song about me. My songs definitely have a lot to do with my personal life, but that just seemed so much about me. And she said, yeah, we're going to write this. And I said, okay, you little bugger, we'll write it. And so we just started writing it. And as soon as I agreed to do it, it just sort of really happened. Like one of the easiest writes that I've ever done is sort of organically unfolded. And little did I know that a couple of years later, because then COVID hit. And so I didn't know for sure what I was going to do making records or what was going to happen or how we were going to do it. But with the 30th anniversary of Take It Like a Man being this year, we went, let's make a full album. And we started looking at some of the songs I'd been writing. And then Small Town has ended up to be one of the cornerstones of the record and the first single. And I think it's wonderful. I'm so proud of the song because I do think that so many of us are small town people. And I guess that reminds me that if you just show up and maybe allow someone that you're writing with to present an idea that you might not consider, like stay open. Mm-hmm. And if you don't like it, then don't do anything with it. But what happens if you end up with something that you love? And that's what happened. We did.
Yeah. And I know like sometimes you guys shelf songs too. You'll write something and, now's not the right time. But yeah. It seems like this one actually came out at the perfect time.
Yeah, it's wonderful when something like that happens and you just don't even plan it.
Was it always going to be upbeat?
Well, one of the things that was important to me if we were going to do this was that it needed to have a country element and a Motown element to it. And because I was raised across the border from Detroit and I grew up listening to country music and I grew up listening to Motown. And so I said, well, it's got to have a Motown vibe if we're going to do it. And so that dictated what the tempo was going to be.
So tell me about Now and then Milestone, the titles, how the two of them kind of intermingle.
Well, Now and Then was the album that was released in 1992 that held that wonderful song, Take It Like a Man. I had a song on the album called Now and Then that was just a beautiful ballad. The label and I decided that that would be a cool title. My manager and I were just talking about what we would call the record. And I said, well, this is quite a milestone in my career, isn't it? And we both went, oh, there it is. I have to tell you, this will be gosh, is this maybe my 12th album? I should probably know that for sure. And I apologize for not having the exact number. But this record has come together easier than any record I've ever made in my career. How wonderful is that? Because it's always stressful when you're making a record. And just like that title, Milestone, it just happened. And we were just like, well, that's it. And we didn't even have to debate it. And that's coming out August 26th.
Very exciting. Some of the songs you said you had written before COVID, was there the idea to put something out before then, or is this kind of a product from it?
We intended to put something out 2019, 2020, then COVID. And the whole concept of making records during that time sort of evolved. And then it became clear to us about a year into COVID that we would be able to start recording. And so that's why as soon as we all kind of stuck our heads out of the clouds a little bit here, or the smoke is settling a bit, that's why I was ready with this music right away, because we recognize that even though we're in the midst of this pandemic and a shutdown, a bunch of recording happened remotely, which was really cool.
Yeah, I know that there's a special dedication for Milestone. You have dedicated to your mom.
I just lost my mom about a year ago.
Oh,
And she was such an important part of my life. I sing because of her. She was a singer. My mom and dad both had country bands, and so I grew up listening to them sing and watching them tote their guitars in and out of the car and off to a bar somewhere, or a wedding or a dance. My mother and father were my inspiration, and I miss her terribly, as you can imagine.
absolutely. A fun spin on the album too. Like I said, we talked about Patricia and her husband, Bob. He produced it. And she's doing some background vocals on a lot of the songs on this album too. Besides Small Town, what else are you excited about?
Wow. And it's interesting that you and I are doing this interview today, because I actually listened to the album last night for the first time in a little while. You get so immersed in the record that you can't have perspective sometimes. I was just so proud of this record. And it has a lot to do with Bob Funk, who produced it. And he really helped me to trust my instincts. And a lot of these songs are songs that I've held on to for a very long time. This is another interesting thing about the record. We re-recorded Take It Like a Man, and it sounds fantastic. Same key. We use 4 of the 6 original musicians on the record. Lonnie Wilson played drums on the original record, and he played drums on this one. And he actually used the same snare drum that he played in 1992. It's very true to the original. It just is a little fresher sounding from a production standpoint. There's a song on the record that I wrote with Adam Scott Wakefield, or he's Adam Wakefield is his name now. He got second on The Voice. We wrote a song called Heartbreak Song, sort of very reminiscent of what Merle Haggard would have written. So that's something I'm really proud of. I wrote a song called Beautiful Thing with Patricia that I just love. And I wrote another song called Everything to Me that I wrote for my husband. And then I recorded a song that I've always wanted to record, a Delbert McClinton song. He didn't write it, but Delbert McClinton put this song out in like 1989, and I heard it and I loved it. And I was like, oh man, someday I want to find a song like that, or write a song like that, or maybe I'll record that song. And I did. And it's called I'm With You. And literally, I heard it in 1989, loved it ever since. And here I am recording it and releasing it on the album in 2022. And I have another song called The Faithless Kind that I've held on to for 20 years, and I finally recorded it. So I find that if I love a song, I always love that song.
Beautiful. You're talking about refreshing Take It Like a Man. How do you think the industry has changed and stayed the same sound wise and within the industry? Because it's such a small Canadian country industry, especially right here in Ontario. What are your thoughts over these past 30 years?
Well, I think Canadians are making better records than ever. Like this festival that I just did in Dauphin, Manitoba, it was all Canadian, the whole roster. I did the first festival there in 1991. You look back at all the artists that they've had, and often it was an American headliner, and the Hunter brothers just blew me away, and all these artists that are making wonderful records. And it has a lot to do with technology today, because we Canadians didn't have the money to go into the big studios and record back in the day. Well, now we all have access to the technology that's available, and it's affordable for everybody. And as a result of that, Canadians don't have to take a backseat to anybody. Definitely a different sound today.
Yeah.
We had pretty progressive sounding records back then, because I was a pretty contemporary artist. I was young and I wanted to push the envelope a little bit, and I didn't want to sound like everybody else. But nowadays, when I hear the sounds, it's a different sound than it was, which is to be expected. We can't sound like we did 30 years ago. Yeah. Now, it's really cool, though, when I do hear an artist that makes a record that is somewhat reminiscent of that sound. My record is very high fidelity. It's got a lot of soul, R&B, Motown, country. That's really the combination that you're going to hear.
Excited to hear more of it. Before we go, I want to touch on this because when possible, I like to talk about different charity work organizations that artists are involved in. And I know you've done so much philanthropy work. Now that society's kind of opened up a little bit more again, do you have anything coming up that you're working with?
St. Jude's is always something that we are involved in. And during a fanfare, I did a free concert there with a bunch of artists to raise money for the cancer division. And we raised so much money. And I did a lot of work with World Vision at one time. I've been to Africa, to Honduras, and to the Dominican Republic with them. I would go again in a heartbeat because it changed my life to see firsthand the challenges that these third world countries are dealing with. You don't know until you're right there looking the mothers in the face and they're, oh boy, I got to watch what they're crying because they don't have a roof over their head and they can't feed their kids. So it's important that we help where we can. And actually, my husband and I were talking about starting to volunteer at an animal shelter. We're looking for something like that. It's good for your soul to do that. And then never mind that the kitty cats and the doggies love it too.
That's great to hear. Thank you so much for your time today. I'm really excited to see all the fun stuff you've got coming up, and good luck with Small Town.
I'm a little bit of small town, edge of the border. Thank you, honey. Thank you. I appreciate your time, dear.